Please join me in welcoming our guest speaker to the floor, Matt Schmid, Senior Manager of Product Marketing at Everbridge. I'm going to now kick our presentation over to you.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today. As Michelle said, my name is Matt Schmid. I am Senior Product Marketing Manager at Everbridge. You might already know that federal E911 regulation compliance dates are virtually upon us. We will discuss those dates for sure, but let's also talk about what's behind these regulations. And most importantly, what is it exactly that your organization needs to do to be compliant? After all, compliance will mean protecting your people while keeping your business operational with reduced risk exposure. Okay, so today's organizations are being asked to do more with less. And part of that is keeping your employees safe, whether they're on-premise or if they're work at home. It's certainly the new normal, and we'll get back to this slide in just a second. Quick important note, we're providing this information about compliance. So we do feel obligated to offer our disclaimer that we are not lawyers. And so please do consult your legal counsel before taking any action regarding the information that we're presenting today. A quick look at Red Sky. Red Sky is based in Chicago and has served the US and Canada going back 20 years as the longest stretch of any business in E911. Red Sky joined the global Everbridge family in January of 2021, earlier this year. Red Sky solutions, importantly to know, offer 100% E911 compliance. So today we'll start off with an overview of Kerry's Law and Ray Baum's Act, protecting workers, the steps needed for compliance, some important dates to remember, and some resources for you at the end, of course. What is the time to act now? It kind of comes down to one concept. Last year, the FCC published a new set of rules around 911 for multiple line telephone systems. And in these rules, they had several effective dates. In fact, between Kerry's Law and Ray Baum's Act, there were 3 important dates to recognize. At Everbridge, we've been talking about these dates for a long time. For you, we're about to cross the last date next month in February 2022. I mean, we know we just can't push everything to work. It takes planning. And in terms of planning, we also know that in order to do anything, it takes money and budgets need cycles. So we want to help you at least understand what you're going to need to do so that you can prepare and be ready to go. Some key terms that we need to be aware of. PSAP, Public Safety Answering Point. That's the 911 calls are answered. In the United States, there's about 6,000 of these, some very small, and some that employ over 1,000 people and take millions of calls a year. Hard phones or a static device. This is really key because the FCC rules focus on this concept. It's most often a phone like you see in the lower right-hand corner, but can include any stationary devices that are enabled to make these calls. And then soft phones. These are typically found on laptops that enable to make them make what we all feel are normal dial tone type calls. And if these devices, whether on a laptop, tablet, or even a smartphone, if they're drawing enterprise dial tone from your organization, then they fall into these regulations. So Kerry's Law came out of a tragic event. A Texas woman named Carrie Hunt was assaulted in a hotel room. At that time, her 9-year-old child tried to call 911, but did not know she needed to dial 9 to get an outside line. Carrie Hunt died, and the hotel had to pay a $41 million legal claim to the family. So the first part of Kerry's Law says you can't require anybody to dial a prefix like 9 to get an outside line before reaching 911. Just dial 911 has to complete that call. in the second part of the law, it was felt that had the hotel been notified that somebody in a room had dialed 911, they would have been able to not only assist, but to also help the first responders find the caller, thus the emergency notifications component. The takeaways here are twofold. You can see how this protects your people, and the liability risk is clear and significant. Bombs Act. The law says that for every 911 call, there has to be a dispatchable location. And a dispatchable location is the street address. And the other such information such as floor or zone or room number. It's important to note that the FCC went out of its way not to quantify dispatchable location as it's intent-based. For example, they didn't say you need a dispatchable location for every 10,000 square feet. More on this in just a bit. There's so much detail to get into around dispatchable location. We'll talk more about that. And we'll have some resources for you to investigate further. So today, what does it take to prepare? What does it take to plan, which is different? And then what does it take to protect your employees, your guests, and the visitors that you have? So how do you prepare? Really preparing means understanding the concept of dispatchable locations. This understanding includes where your so-called endpoints are, whether they're in the building or they are remote workers, and then understanding what kind of technologies may come with your phone system and what you may need to do to supplement that. So back to Carrie's Law. First thing you want to do for compliance is connect with your technology partners to ensure they have a good understanding of your call servers, which is essentially your phone system. Then you need to understand who are the people that should be notified if ever a 911 call is placed. For example, a college campus may have a safety department that has a dedicated person to notify, but a sprawling automobile dealership may not have such a person. Who's that person or team in your organization? Bombs Act. Remember, this is really centered on the concept of dispatchable locations. So whether it's a map or a table or a list or even a spreadsheet, you'll need to make sure that every building in your enterprise has a legitimate street address. Again, this will take close coordination with teams across your organization. There's lots of E911 solutions out there. Some are built into the call servers I mentioned. Discover what your provider is providing natively. See if that meets your needs. An organization with over 200 hard phones, for example, will likely need a programmatic approach. And you're likely using soft phone clients now on your laptops. Well, that just kind of breaks 911 right there because we can take laptops anywhere. So do your research. So plan. Okay, you kind of know what you have to do. Now, how do you do it? There's really a couple of things you want to balance. Your work plan, budget cycles, contract stuff, mapping buildings and devices, deployment, lots of things. Back to Carrie's Law again. The due date has passed. The asterisk is there due to some exceptions around updates versus new equipment, but given the last 12 to 18 months, updates have very likely occurred. And if any system upgrades are planned, you need to make sure that you're planning to become compliant as part of that. So dispatchable location, and I'm just going to tell you, and this is why we have the disclaimer that we're not lawyers. It's a pretty soft topic. The FCC and most states do not define what dispatchable location means exactly. So in the picture up here in the upper right-hand corner, you've got this 50,000 square foot loading dock, an open line of sight. You can see all the phones on the walls. If a first responder comes into either of those doors, they're going to see who needs help. If I go down to the warehouse, I've got all these racks of equipment. and I can't see across the room, I'm going to need to create zones to help guide a first responder to find out exactly where that call is coming from. Closed door offices, to me, this is a no-brainer. Everyone that needs a closed door office needs their own dispatchable location. In this picture, how do you know which office the caller came from without having it programmed as a dispatchable location? And then finally, you've got this open cube farm. Since it's likely only 2 doors coming in, the location of who needs help should be evident. You could get by with just one dispatchable location. Now, if there's 500 people in there, you want to be smart about it and break that up into zones. But in this picture, one should do. This matrix is pretty simple and straightforward. The dates are important and relate to Raybaum's Act compliance. Across the top, you have hard phones and soft phones. Along the side, you have on and off-premise detail. In the middle, you have the dates for those. One date has passed earlier this year, and the final dates, in a matter of weeks, will round out the compliance dates for the FCC regulations. The last part of the plan is to find your E911 solution. We know the dates are upon us. The project is complex. Everbridge and Red Sky will get you to 100% compliance. And finally, protect. So why are you doing this? It's not just because it's the right thing to do. You want to make sure that you're protecting the most important assets of your environment. And that's employee and guest safety. Anybody can pick up a phone and dial 911. Be sure your people and your businesses are both protected. So the responsibility of the employer is now documented, which means while before these laws were in place, somebody could decide that, nobody ever dials 911. Well, now when something bad happens, now somebody can point to this and say, hey, you weren't compliant. This is where you can now plainly see that the corporate risk portfolio just grew significantly. The common vision of the world is that people are going to be working remotely indefinitely. You need to make sure that your employees who are using corporate assets and are working remotely are protected. And then this last one, and I kind of struggled with the wording of it. The idea of deploying a 911 solution is not only to protect your employees, but it's also to mitigate the risk associated with something bad happening. So it's there to protect the employer as well. So this is the commercial part of it, the Red Sky solutions from Everbridge. And again, just to remember this, find, route, and notify. Everbridge provides you the tools so that you're compliant. We have the solutions to find employees making 911 calls no matter where they are. Everbridge provides the routing to all those PSAPs in the US and Canada that we talked about. And there's 5 flavors of notification supporting remote workers and everyone across your enterprise. And then the Everbridge footprint covers today the US and Canada and more to follow. The key is that the tools are there and are available to be compliant.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Matt. That was truly a fantastic presentation. Really appreciate you spending the morning with us, actually, and